really quick video, hopefully. It was about my gauges. We had somebody in the comments of one of my other videos asking about the gauges, where I got them, where I got the pod, stuff like that. So I'm just going to run through it real quick and hopefully show you how easy they were to install. I'm not going to go through the whole, like, tearing it apart, do the whole install process again. There's really no need. I can pretty much explain it. I'll go through some of the options on the gauges. I'm still learning to use them myself. I know there's like a graph mode that you can do, and I haven't really played with it too much. I just haven't had the time to really go through it. And I really didn't need the graph mode. I just know it can do it. But it is nice to know how to do everything your gauges you can do, especially if he's paid like, $250 or whatever they are, $300 each for them. But yeah, these gauges that I have, they're aeroforce interceptor gauges. They're not cheap. I'll say that right off the bat. You can probably just get away with having one. That's all you need. You don't need three. Even two would be fine. I wish they made just a dual gauge pod for the center stack here that I have, but they only made a 3, so I was pretty much forced to get 3. I could have got a cheaper gauge to fill in the hole or something just to fill in the space, but I like all my gauges to match. And I also had to buy the optional silver trim rings, which I feel match the silver trim on the interior of the SS better. A lot of people don't like the silver trim. I do. Everyone kind of changes from the silver to the black. But, I mean, the black trim in Australia is basically the base model, so I don't know why you'd want to just make your car on the interior look like the base model. It's like a high luster silver, so it doesn't really bother me. I think it breaks up the interior nice. That's my reasoning behind getting the silver rings. Alright, these are the gauges. They are aeroforce interceptor gauges. They basically just plug and play right into your OBD connector, and they can read anything that the OBD connector can see for the most part. So there's no need to run all kinds of wires for different sensors and stuff like that. They can also read diagnostic trouble codes and clear them. So if you have a check engine light, you can clear it right from here as long as there's no other problem, and the light will go away. The gauge pod is made by Mobile Attractions. They did briefly go out of business recently. I guess the owner wanted to go on and do something else with another business that he's involved in. Luckily, someone did buy the business off him, so he sold the molds and everything and the business license to somebody else. They relocated, and now they're just starting back up again, so I will leave a link to the website where you guys can get this pod. I do like this pod a lot better than some of the other ones. They do make one that, I'm pan down here, they do make one that goes down here inside the cubby hole, but who the heck wants to look down there at gauges, where up here you can just take a quick glance and you can see them. It's very intuitive. While you're driving, you can just look at them real quick, and I'll go ahead and turn them on. And they do have like a little SS animation when they start up. It's pretty cool. Oh, you can see that too well. Alright, so I should explain this. I do have air-fuel ratio, but that's because I have a wideband controller hooked up to my car, so I can have it remote tuned and stuff. So this is basically an analog input, which the gauge has on the back. So from the wideband controller, I just ran a wire to the gauge, and you just input some settings for the thing to look for, and it reads exactly what my wideband controller reads. So there's no need to mount another box. The trans temp does something a little funky. You can see that. I think it has to do with the OBD connector, but once it gets up to operating temperature, it doesn't bounce back and forth like that. I think it's just at the maximum of its range. See, you can switch back and forth between different parameters, like that's torque converter, slip, air-fuel ratio again, RPM, trans temp, and you pick on each one of these gauges what parameters you want to monitor and which ones you can go through. So right here I have oil pressure and battery voltage. I have coolant temp and intake air temp and trans temp and air fuel ratio. And at any given time I can switch to another parameter if I want to, just pushing a button. So it's really cool. As far as oil temperature, I don't think the SS has an oil temperature gauge factory. So it does have an oil temperature reading, but I think it's more like an estimate based on operating temperature. I don't know. If I can go through the menu here, you try to hit both buttons. I'll leave a link to the website for these gauges, but there's just like an endless amount you can do to them. Okay, as far as installation goes, on each side of the pod, there's an interior push pin. So once you take out the factory speaker grill, you just snap this into place. It's really that simple. It does move around a little bit if you kind of force it, but as far as driving around, it doesn't ever move. Some people complain about the fitment, but I think it fits fine. It is leather wrapped, which makes it look pretty nice. It matches somewhat the perforated leather on here. I don't know. They did their best. They used to offer red stitching, but they said that the UV light from the windshield, I guess, faded the stitching really quick, so they stopped offering it. Okay, as far as installation, I don't know if it's any easier or harder on the 16 and 17 because you don't have a CD slot. But on this, I just kind of reach my finger in the CD slot and you just like pull. I don't know if I can do this one-handed. There we go. So pull that out, and you'd also pull out this other side. Same thing, you just kind of grab it, give it a good tug. There's a screw on each side. I don't know if people will see that right there. That holds the radio in, and it's basically the whole radio assembly. So the vents, the radio, this trim piece, the vent here, the buttons, everything just kind of flops out. And so you just pull that out, and now you have access to the whole dashboard area behind here. So you can run all your wires right from up here down, and I went underneath my steering wheel, like by the knee airbag over there, and right to the OBD connector. And I'll put a link in the description of the OBD adapter I used. It comes with a 1 to 2 splitter with the gauges that you buy, but I had 3 gauges, so I bought a OBD 1 to 3 splitter that also had a flat cable, so it's just a lot easier to run the flat cable around, in between different panels and stuff like that. It just makes it cleaner, instead of having a wire just kind of hanging down and looping back under the dash. And that's about it. And then once you just snap the radio back in, just take this piece, put it back in there, and snap it in. That's it. This car is relatively easy to pull apart. Everything I've done on it so far is, there's nothing hard about it. Alright guys, that about wraps it up. I hope this was helpful to some people. I didn't want to go through the whole running the wires thing, because it's really basic. Once you get behind that radio, you know exactly what to do. There's nothing too difficult about running the wire through there. I don't even need a snake or anything to run the wires. And as far as setting up the gauges, there's other videos out there, even from Interceptor themselves, about how to set it up and run the different parameters and set up the analog inputs if you want to add air-fuel ratio gauge, stuff like that. So I'll leave that up to them, because there's just plenty of info on there. It'll just make this video, 2 hours long. Also, don't forget to check out my friend's channel, Tuner Army. He just got an Expedition with the EcoBoost engine, so that's a really cool car. I'd like to see that thing soon. He's got a lot more videos than I do. He's a lot better at uploading videos and keeping on it. He uploads at least once a week, twice a week. I'm trying to get to that level, but it's just, God, it's been so cold. You can't even fathom. If you don't have a piece of skin covered, it's painful. I know you guys in the southern states worry about heat stroke days and drink plenty of water. I wish that was the case sometimes around here. When it's like -5, you could pretty much die. There's no other two ways about it. Alright guys, and also let me know if you want to see anything else on my channel with my car, with my bike. Providing it doesn't snow, I can pull it out of the garage and show you guys something on it if you're wondering. with the car, I am driving in the winter, so it is my only car right now. Some people will hate me for that, but it's just a car. It's nothing. It doesn't have crazy low mileage. I'm approaching 60,000 miles, and what's the point of having a car if you don't drive it? See you next time.